You know, the scale of Bitcoin adoption feels unrealistic, and I don't know what the limit, or in this case, the upper limit could be. And in case you missed it, a few videos ago we got some information from Michael Saylor. He said that there are over 10,000 companies on the stock exchanges that aren't necessarily zombie companies, but they don't get as much attention as, for example, Google, Amazon, or Apple. He said that these companies will have no choice in the future. They will have to buy Bitcoin in order to stay relevant. And that's what Michael Saylor said. And we could see that the first 3 or 4 companies that adopted a Bitcoin strategy saw their stock prices increase by 200 to 3,000%. MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor's company, saw a 3,000% increase. And one of the most recent companies saw a 200% rise after announcing that they wanted to buy Bitcoin. Michael Saylor even believes that in the future, if you are a company, you will need Bitcoin in order to outperform as a business.
Bitcoin represents the greatest digital transformation of the 21st century. It represents digital capital. Global wealth is distributed across assets that provide utility and others that preserve capital. But risk is destroying trillions of dollars of that capital every single year, and investors are turning to digital capital in the form of Bitcoin in order to avoid that risk. Digital capital is economically and technically superior to physical capital, and it represents a revolutionary advance in capital preservation. The asset class itself is growing from trillions to hundreds of trillions of dollars, and it is backed by digital power along with political and economic power. Bitcoin is the best asset you can own. The numbers speak for themselves. It makes a lot more sense to buy Bitcoin than to buy back your own stock, or to hold Bitcoin rather than holding bonds. So if you want to outperform, you're going to need Bitcoin. Luckily, you have an alternative. Public support for Bitcoin is surging, as is support for the U.S. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve.
Sell them into Bitcoin. That way we wouldn't have to use any new dollars.
Wall Street support is also growing.
I believe Bitcoin is legitimate.
And the President of the United States says,
never sell your Bitcoin, right?
That's why we're entering year 1 of the crypto renaissance, and you have a choice to make. Cling to the past or embrace the future. Divest billions of dollars and slow your growth rate. Invest billions of dollars and accelerate your growth rate.
The fact is, the more companies see that those who have added Bitcoin to their balance sheets experience a positive increase in their stock price, the more this will lead other companies to buy more Bitcoin and repeat the same. That's why Michael Saylor will be proven right, and honestly, it almost feels like a joke because everything is happening so quickly. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone says something is going to happen, but it never does? Or you expect something to happen in life, but it just doesn't? That's how a lot of this feels. For years, we've heard that companies and institutions are looking at crypto and are going to get involved. Now that they're actually here, it feels so surreal because we know they're really here. The news we've received recently and continue to receive daily says that companies are buying so much Bitcoin that, based on their level of accumulation, they will probably end up holding half or even more than half of all the Bitcoin in the world if you do the math. And we also saw that a Chinese consumer goods company called DDC Enterprise has unveiled a brand new Bitcoin accumulation strategy. They announced that they would initially purchase 100 Bitcoin, but plan to acquire another 500 Bitcoin in the future, and within the next 36 months, they will accumulate an additional 5,000 Bitcoin. They said, I am absolutely thrilled to announce DDC's Bitcoin strategy, which is an important part of our plan. In the long term, it will succeed. So DDC is a Chinese company that is now also accumulating Bitcoin. That means they are buying Bitcoin, accumulating it, and hoarding Bitcoin. And if you haven't noticed yet, these companies are really exciting because, unlike MicroStrategy, for example, they are all taking different approaches to do this. Some are taking on debt to buy Bitcoin, just like MicroStrategy did by borrowing money. Other companies simply use their extra profits, meaning the money they have left over, to buy as much Bitcoin as they can. Their goal is to increase something they call BPS. So BPS stands for Bitcoin per share. That means they want each share of their company to be worth more Bitcoin. And many of these companies are publicly traded and have promised to generate more profit for their shareholders by accumulating more and more Bitcoin. And you know what's really going to be strange? In 2032, something big is going to happen with Bitcoin. At that time, there will be another Bitcoin halving, and during the Bitcoin halving, the reward for what's called Bitcoin mining is cut in half. And Bitcoin mining is a process by which new Bitcoins enter the system. And in 2032, this reward will be so small that it won't even be a whole Bitcoin anymore, but only Satoshis. And a Satoshi is the smallest unit of Bitcoin, just like a cent is for the euro or the dollar, for example. And I call that dust because it's such a tiny amount, and for the next 110 years, there won't be a whole new Bitcoin created anymore. What's even crazier is, we constantly hear about these companies buying large amounts of Bitcoin, for example 500, 1,000, or even 5,000 Bitcoins. But in the past, a few years ago, they would have gotten much more for the same amount of money. Maybe 75,000 Bitcoins instead of just 5,000. The reason is that the price of Bitcoin has risen so much compared to the US dollar or the euro. That's why they can now buy less Bitcoin even though they're spending so much money. And now just imagine, in the year 2040, these companies proudly show on television that they have just bought 1.1 Bitcoin, and that makes their stock price go up because Bitcoin is so valuable by then. They will then say, "We were lucky and were still able to buy 0.78 Bitcoin for our balance sheet, for our treasury, because that's all we can afford right now." That might be a bit exaggerated right now, but it's heading in the right direction, and you understand what I mean by that. We will probably experience situations like that. Even with a company like MicroStrategy, which already owns a lot of Bitcoin today, it will be like that at some point. Basically, it shows how valuable Bitcoin could become in the future and how little of it is still available. And what do you basically think about that? Imagine at some point in the future they say, "Hey, we have even more Bitcoin and now it's worth billions." Weird, isn't it? And just now, a company from Sweden, H100, which operates in the healthcare sector, announced that they have bought Bitcoin worth $500,000. And guess what happened? Their stock price shot up by almost 40%. And more other companies that don't have any Bitcoin are noticing this. And they say it's part of their long-term strategy. And a few years ago, some companies only made symbolic announcements that they might buy a few Bitcoin or invest a few $100s. And that was basically a little hint to show that they were also thinking about doing it. But now there are already about 10 to 12 companies that are doing this openly, and there are even more doing it behind the scenes. A company from Bahrain has also announced that it is the first public company in the Middle East to add Bitcoin to its reserves. They announced this and thanked Michael Saylor for inspiring them to invest in Bitcoin. And one of their chairmen said that they believe Bitcoin will play a central role in the financial world in the future. And I also recently read that a crypto influencer from Germany said there are still enough Bitcoins on the crypto exchanges, and many of the comments under this post basically agreed with him. And I absolutely do not share this opinion. As long as people don't understand that the market is manipulated and that BlackRock and others are working against you, not for you, that they deliberately use the media to keep people from investing in Bitcoin and spread false information and so on, most people won't take action and buy Bitcoin. And I believe that there isn't much Bitcoin left on the crypto exchanges left for sale. Maybe they're being stored there, but there aren't that many left for sale. And I also believe that if you don't have any Bitcoin in the future, you're done for. And I really mean that. Or when others say that you should first understand Bitcoin and only then invest in it, don't do that. Taking action is more important. Basically, there are two major companies competing for the remaining liquid supply of Bitcoin on the crypto exchanges. And you know which ones I mean. The question is, how will the market react when there are 10, 11, 12, or even 13, 15, 20 companies? These are public companies that are listed. There are also many private companies that are probably buying as well, but aren't announcing it. The amount of Bitcoin on the OTC markets is dwindling more and more. We're getting reports. $370 million worth of Bitcoin were withdrawn from Coinbase in just a few hours. On some days, $1 billion flow out of the crypto exchange. Those are purchases. It's disappearing at a rapid pace. Price predictions for this year are now going as high as $500,000 by the end of 2025. No one knows for sure if that will happen, but at some point the switch will be flipped and then we'll see the Bitcoin price rise dramatically. There are even more and more analysts now saying that the Bitcoin cycles, the 4-year cycles, are over. But if the 4-year cycle is broken and prices are still rising slowly through March, April, and May of 2026, then the people who sold their Bitcoin will have to watch as the price keeps going up, and they'll have to buy back in at, for example, $620,000 per Bitcoin. Never forget how early we are in this market right now, how early you are in this market, and how lucky you can consider yourself to own some of it if you have invested in Bitcoin. 3 new companies have been added to this list, and I expect that over the course of June we will hear about 10 more companies that are also investing in Bitcoin. And this is the first time that something like this has basically happened. And one thing is really troubling. If you are not actively interested in this development, you are missing the train that is just leaving the station. And this will affect a great many people who are currently sleeping through this trend or this development. People who, due to uncertainty, blind trust in the government, the media, and so-called experts, are not taking the step to invest in Bitcoin. Maybe it's because they think the CIA created Bitcoin or Putin or something else is stopping them from really questioning their reality and saying, okay, this could perhaps be the biggest bet of my life. I am going to take this step for myself and for the financial freedom of my family. They are not taking action, even though the largest asset manager, BlackRock, is massively investing in Bitcoin, recommending its clients to invest heavily in Bitcoin. MicroStrategy is buying huge amounts of Bitcoin, and many other companies are also adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets. And every day, more and more are joining in. It's just crazy not to act now and recognize the trend. And that also means it's a real shame they won't be able to achieve financial independence through crypto and Bitcoin. If you want to do it, if you're interested, click the link in the description below the video and watch the video. What's important is that you take action because the train is just about to leave the station.